to the microphone.
Pick up the mic.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, David, Mrs. David. Yeah. So, David and I have known each other for a long time. At the rehearsal dinner, we used the term "from the womb." Yeah, we're twins for sure. Anyhow, I'm super excited as we are. Like, this was such an amazing, experience here to be part of this new adventure and the start of many adventures between these two with the Lord. I'm so stoked to get to know my new sister-in-law. I've never had a sister by name in any way, shape, or form. I'm so happy with the one that my brother is marrying. She's amazing, and she laughs at my jokes, which is very important. So, yeah, but of the two of them, I do know David better. And so I thought I'd sort of just have an easy evening of just sort of talking a little bit about what it was like to grow up as David's twin. A lot of you know him from San Francisco, San Luis Obispo, but I'm gonna go reach a little deeper back in time. Maybe expose some things about David, that someone privy to. So, yeah, David and I are twins, and we came out about as fraternal as you can be. Complete opposites. Yeah, even of course, starting from the looks, David was always lean. He came out jet black hair, hazel eyes. I was very chubby, blue-eyed, very blonde hair. My mom's name for me as a child was Fluffy. Literally, she told people that. And that's about as similar as we got. We were the odd couple of sort of best friend brothers from birth up. I remember we campaigned in middle school as a great president, vice president. We went as like yin yang, wild and the mild. David came out as this just gentleman, although that was such a misnomer. You were one of the most adventurous people that I've ever met. Much more than me, actually, I would say, would be truthful. But David came out. I was telling my dad this the other night, and so he was okay with it, so I think I'm gonna say it. He came out almost a little pre-sanctified. For you, those who don't know what that means, basically David was always very much a gentleman, very obedient. God was like, here's like version 2.0, like he comes with all the packages here, he's the easy one of easy one. And then 12 minutes later, I came out. God gave my parents David so they could focus on, this one's gonna need some work. I'll be brief about that. We were so blessed to have parents that did not withhold discipline from us, and that is a blessing for sure. But that did include spankings, and maybe David's whole life, I could probably count the amount of times this guy had to receive such discipline on one hand and have a few fingers left over. And my parents could easily expect to have to surpass that with me on a daily basis. So we'll just leave it there. That went on for a while. So I thought I'd just sort of talk about some fun stories from us, just sort of maybe a couple more, talk about how sort of it was interesting, the opposite dynamic, so I can really get into what a blessing David has been to me as a brother, and really a necessity. I think God was very purposeful in all of that, and very sovereign over it, and I think he has a great, wonderful sense of humor. And so on our first birthday, this is one, there's so many stories that we love to tell, but this is one of them. On our first birthday, my mom made both of us a little cake, And she put us like right on the ground, right there, and put us on our diapers in front of our cakes, and just sort of, all right, let's see what happens. David's cake at the end looked very pristine, with a bunch of little dimples on top, and mine looked like someone had taken a slip and slide through it. And it was everywhere. And so what David would do is he would very carefully stick his finger in the top and like to get as little icing anywhere on his body as he could. And I was like, most of it probably didn't go in my mouth, to be honest. And so we were always so opposite. Man, let's see.
Love it.
Thank you.
Keep going.
Yeah. Anyhow, y'all pretty much got the dynamic. So, back to David. He's an amazing man, always well respected from those around him, very much loved. There's never a person I don't think I've ever encountered or heard of who wasn't like, I don't know about David, or we don't really match. Like, everybody loves David. Everyone gets along with David. And it's not because he's like a compromising sort of like, I'm just doing what I can to be along. He's like such a kind person, such a great sense of humor, patient. He's a peacemaker mostly. And you know, he's a great listener. And that's authentic. Those aren't just words coming out of my mouth. That's true, and I think everyone here would agree with those to the uttermost, right? Like, that's very true about him. David always had this reputation of, whether in the family or friends, of being very straight-laced, very, down the straight and narrow, and it was truthful. It was a true, genuine description of who he was, and it's such a blessing. But David, beneath his composed surface, which most of you know, did have one small weakness, a kryptonite, crack in the armor, breach in the wall. Our family watched a lot of movies, and I'd say our main family movie trilogy would be Lord of the Rings. Would you not say so, David?
I agree.
Affirmation. And so for those who don't know, there's basically this really bad ring that needs to get destroyed in this mountain. And anyhow, so the main bad guy named Sauron, he's corrupting this ring of power. And he says, in the beginning it says, into this ring he poured his cruelty, his malice, and his will to dominate all life. Me ring, David Sauron. It's true. A little hyperbole never hurt anyone. But this dude, he was a prankster, and I mean, in the most loving and awesome way. Sometimes not in the moment, but it was always laughs. Sometimes very much not in the moment. Dave, I'll give you a quick story and move on to the best part of this speech where I'm talking about being strength. But I really got to keep one of these in here because I need to air at least one grievance. David developed his dexterity, movement, and just general situational awareness much earlier than I did as a child, of course. And so we had this house where like the entryway matched with the kitchen and the living room, and then you could just run circles. And so I would sit there, sort of dazing off, and David would be enjoying running around, and every time he'd come around to me, he'd bop me on the head. And he'd come around, and then bop me on the head. He was like the Flash, just doing circles. And by the time I got up, I didn't know how to run and turn yet. I just knew how to look where I wanted to go. And so I was banging into the walls, trying to catch up with him. And that was basically a great metaphor of just growing up with him. That was great. I loved it though. Just loved it. But the best part, seriously, the best part, of course, is just the friendship that I've experienced my entire life long with this man. And like I said earlier, God is so good, guys. He's hilarious sometimes in the most wonderful and best ways. But he's always so good. I'm so thankful for every family member here who's like poured into my life in different ways. You've had unique effects, but David is special. Like, and I mean that not in a, I mean that in a serious way. With David he's my relationship with him is very, very special. Even when we're more separated than ever as adults by distance and from business. I wish I could download to you just sort of the experience of companionship I've had at this man's side for most of my life, and I'm excited for you to receive that companionship, which I'm sure is even better and more developed when I even had it. Hopefully. I'm sure. And like even as a kid, from like just simple things like just being a spontaneous wrestling and sword stick fighting partner at any time. To be someone to go through being socially awkward and friendless in middle school with. Actually, some of the groomsmen here, a short story, David and I in middle school, we had just come out of homeschool, very awkward. And we didn't have any friends, so at lunch we would just walk circles around like the lunch area, and we would just count how many times we could go around during lunch, and then we'd go to class. And then the next day it would repeat itself. We just got 1 lap, 2 lap, we're awesome. And then at some point God's like, all right, these guys need help. And literally, this is not a figurative, threw Emmett into us during our round. He saw one of the groomsmen. And this kid just gets chucked into us, and he becomes our best friend. I'm like, we needed that, thank you. So like being able to go through that, like not alone with someone who was more mature, more discerning, someone to look up to, who was actually more, even though I would go by the wild and the mild, he was more brave to enter into social interactions and sort of press the bounds. Like when girls would come up to talk to me, I would literally run away every time. I remember there was a day when David stayed and talked, and I looked back, I felt so betrayed. But I needed that, because you can't keep running away when you're 26. Or singing. Yeah, or when we were rooming in college for the first time, like cooking dinner together, and because we went to the same college town, it was just him and I for the first year, and even though we really shared a bunk bed, I think our entire life, all the way up to college. And we lived in so many, like 20 plus places at that point, moving around, but like, just like the little memories of like, oh, okay, I'm gonna cook today, you're gonna clean up today, just like stuff like that, and David really took care of me in college. College was a learning time for Daniel Schaefer. I'm gonna skip those embarrassing moments. But David was always there, like just so servant-hearted, like vacuuming up, like just sort of like, it's another day with Daniel, you know, just like doing the thing, like washing the dishes, cooking me, and I was like, I was oblivious to it all. In retrospect, I'm like, I would have snapped if I was David, but he's so patient. David and me have done everything together our whole life. Everything. Like, there's not a memory. He was there for me for the fun moments and my most shameful moments. When everyone else in my life has either at some point and of course not some family members, but most of the people in my life, especially friends and stuff, at some point had either shunned me or made me feel unaccepted or like a weirdo, which honestly I was at some point, or like an outsider. David never did that. Never. Like even when he was probably our friends at some point might have encouraged that in our immaturity. Like David, I always felt safe. I always felt like wherever David was, I could go and walk up next to him and be included in the friend group. And he was happy there, and he'd include me in the conversation. And that meant so much to me as a very weird kid for most of my life. And very socially awkward and very outgoing and not knowing how to talk to people. But I could always just like, shh, David, I'm safe, you know? And it's really tender to me. It's funny, but it's tender. Yeah, David teased me, but as a brother, never in a negative sort of like shaming way, and I always felt safe. And he always set such a strong example for us many times a much needed convicting example for me to want to replicate. For effort, focus, calmness, self-control. Self-control. David has great self-control. I love it. As much as David's God's given good nature was a gift to my parents, it was for me as well. God gave me David as a twin with a purpose. God gave me a living, constant companion to keep me centered and on track, even if neither of us realized it at the time. God's invisible attributes are evident through all of creation. God's companionship in my life is exampled by the twin he had come out even before I was born. David was there to be with me, this mess, the whole time. God gave me the right brother in David Schaefer. So close to getting, like, that's the last sentence. I mean, not much avoiding eye contact. I said we're dead to the soul. All right, so, God gave me the right brother in David, like, in the best and most humorous, but most needed ways. And I'm so excited because now God's given Brienne the right husband. And so I want to raise a glass to God giving Brienne the right husband in David Schaefer. Amen. Please give our best man another round of applause for those heartfelt words.